Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kate Jacobson. I'm a librarian with the Ramsey County Libraries, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our last session in the Schools of Psychology. So today, this program is brought to you through the co-sponsorship of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute of the University of Minnesota and the Ramsey County Libraries, whose financial support helps make this program available. So, without any further ado, let's get JB on here. Hi, JB.
I,
So, I'm back.
yeah, welcome.
So, very last minute. So, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad JB's here, and I'm glad all of you are here. So, I'm going to turn things over to JB.
Good, thank you. I need to spend a little time getting hooked up here. Today we're going to do B.F. Skinner, pictured here. Uh, he and next quarter we'll be heading back to President's and a lot more people in attendance. Anyhow, B.F. Skinner, he was a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor specializing in psychology. First thing we're going to do is look at his background. BF stands for Burris Frederick. So no wonder he went by BF. Nickname was Burr, or would have been Burr if he hadn't gone by BF. Burr is in ice cold. Burr is what's that thing on my pants? So you could make a lot of fun of this guy if he was going by Burr. He lived from 20 March 1904 to 18 August 1990 and died at the age of 89 years and 5 months. Here's his tombstone, and his wife is buried with him there. She died, as you can see, 7 years after he did. His cause of death was leukemia. Body can't fight off infections, is generally what happens. He had 21 books published and 180 articles published. This is just the latter portion of books that he had published in his career. His most famous book, cover is pictured here, is Walden 2. And the caption down below here is a controversial novel of morality and immorality in a scientifically shaped utopia. Excuse me. And he was, we'll talk about that in a bit. This is another picture of him. He's the father of modern behaviorism. There was a behaviorism movement in the late 1800s. It had been around for quite a while. Then in the 1950s, 40s, it got modernized, and Skinner is considered the founder of the modern uh, school of behaviorism. He's raised in a Christian family, but after college and after looking into psychology and so on, he announced himself as an atheist. His higher education, he went to Hamilton College. It's a 4 year college. He got a 4 year degree there. It's located in Clinton, New York, and he did not major in psychology. He majored in English literature, hence the writing of a novel that involves behaviorism, that Walden 2 novel. It's named for Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers, made famous in modern times by Lin-Manuel Miranda, pictured here on the right. Uh, to go to this college today, you have to be able to speak rap hip hop. That's what the songs in the Broadway musical are about. That Broadway musical brought great wealth to Miranda. He, living in his parents' basement, he wrote it. He's now worth $100 million. Graduate school, he went to Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Here's a picture of their main center there with a large open space. And in the background, more of the Harvard campus. Got a PhD from Harvard in 1931. Vocation. From 1931 to 1936, after he graduated, he stayed at Harvard for 5 more years and did research for them. And he was self-employed there. And due to that BA degree in English literature, he wanted to write a novel or novels. And he became a friend of Robert Frost, who's pictured here, who was a tremendous help to him in getting started and really encouraged him in the writing of a novel. Skinner decided to quit writing. He said, "This isn't working. I'm going nowhere with it." He felt he didn't have enough life experiences to bring ideas into his writing sphere. He's too young to be a novelist yet, is kind of what he was thinking. From 1936 to 74, that's the rest of his working life. He taught. He was a teacher, a college professor. Hey, 1937 to 1946, he taught at the University of Minnesota, the Minneapolis campus. The University of Minnesota has often been called a feeder university. A lot of very famous people start off here, then they go to other schools, bigger named institutions often. But there have been a lot of very famous people who have taught at the University of Minnesota. And the graphic here is Northrop Auditorium and the mall, one end of the mall area. This is Northrop Auditorium. This is I think that's, yeah, it's an administration building. 1946 to 48, he moved to Indiana University, and a lot of fame. That's a lot of the sex research that was done by psychologists came out of Indiana University. Then 1948 to 74, back to Harvard, this time as a faculty member, not as a graduate student. Politics. He was active in teaching during World War II and during the first and only use of atomic bombs, 2 of them in Japan. And his major, one of his major tenets became humans need to move away from self-destruction. Politics is wrongfully about controlling people, according to Skinner and behaviorists. Positive reinforcements is needed in politics. You do something good, you get rewarded for it. It's not about being in charge of a large group of people. This is also corporate America philosophy. You're in charge of a whole bunch of people. You measure them by whether or not they do what you ask them to do. So, how is positive reinforcement different from control? Well, I don't know. Anyhow, it's an interesting question, but it generally makes if you're being controlled, you feel put down. If you're being positively reinforced and moving on as a result, you're feeling more like you're having experiences and some control yourself. Skinner said what the world needs is local control, a decentralized system. Here's a centralized system. There's a leader at the middle sending out messages in all directions here. This is a decentralized system, still a leader, but in multiple groups. And this is a more evenly distributed system in a organization where everyone has a say. Purpose of life. This is the introduction. Purpose of life, according to Skinner, is find happiness, be happy, be somebody, feel good. Don't worry, be happy. Notice this thing up here. I'm wondering if that's one of those Grand Rapids military airplanes. Anyway, how do you be happy? Have work time, have leisure time, have a healthy environment, have lots of friends, know what you need to do at work, what you need to do at play. What do you need to do to be leading a happy life and in a healthy environment? And Skinner says, one thing, have lots of friends. Make contributions that help others. Show to others that you're a helping person. Eliminate as much negativity in the life of yourself and others as you can. Be pleasant. Eliminate unpleasantness. End consumerism. This is how Skinner says we've gotten to be just negative about ourselves and so forth. How much do we have? Do we have enough? How do I get more? End consumerism for a better life, according to Skinner. More people, more consumption. It's not all about consumption. End competition. It's not a good thing. Cooperation is much better. People generally tend to meet in groups in a work environment, even in a leisure time environment. Showing competition there, not a good thing. How many dresses do I have? How many pairs of pants do I own? So many that I have to rent a storage unit. Cooperation is great. Community is most important. It's not how am I better than the rest of you. Sounds like that's an end to capitalism from Skinner's approach here. Anyway, capitalism has a lot of those very values that Skinner has stated as being negative. Purpose of life. Now, here's where we're going to talk about how do we live then? How do we be good? How do we be kind, as we talked about early on here? There's a community that was built by behaviorists, and it's called the Twin Oaks Community. And here they are. This is a dance session. You can see there's people of different ages. Here's an older person. There's younger people. It's founded in 1967. That's almost 30 years before Skinner died. It was founded by followers of Skinner, a fellow behaviorist. It's located in Louisa, Virginia. There are 100 people that are allowed to live on the grounds and in the community. And the community itself owns 450 acres. So I did some calculating. That's 4.5 acres per person. That's 21,789 square yards per person. That's 940 feet on each side of a square for each person. 313 yards per square. It's the size of 4.3 football fields. Does the fact that it has a lot of room for each person, although they aren't separated into these units, but does that help the feeling of openness? Here's another photo from the Twin Oaks community, still in existence. And they have a website. You can go to it and read about it. Just type in Twin Oaks community when you search, and you can find out all about this community and how it functions. They have had a tragedy just a month ago. They had a fire there, and I'm just going to read this. In late January, Twin Oaks had an electrical fire in one of our residences. No one was hurt, but the building was home to 10 members. Our community clothes, plus the laundry and a wood shop, were located in that building. We found rooms for everyone to stay in and are in recovery mode. So they're rebuilding the unit that burned down. But here you can see a common play place or a common gathering place is in Hundred Oaks community. This is like what we do once a year here in the United States, know your neighborhood. You get out and talk to neighbors. These people do it every day. Skinnerian behaviorism. Let's talk about what Skinner brought to the behaviorist movement and how he changed it. Traditional behaviorism from the late 1800s was started and philosophized by Ivan Pavlov, pictured here in the top photo, and by John Watson in the bottom photo. Traditional behaviorism. Skinner said this approach to behaviorism needs some changes, big time changes, and he made them. He founded what is called radical behaviorism in the last 60 to 75 years or so. So this lecture really, it's about Skinner and it's about radical behaviorism. It's not about the original approaches to behaviorism, which is a whole nother lecture. But we're not doing it. We're going back to the presidents in 1 month doing Ulysses Grant. The creation of radical behaviorism was a response to what Skinner called depth psychology. And depth psychology is what is practiced by non-behaviorists. So it's all the other psychology movements and philosophies outside of behaviorism. And this deep psychology is about the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the partly conscious aspects that people have. Depth psychology, long-term counseling. We can do it quicker in behaviorism, according to Skinner. Behaviorism is about reinforcement. You don't find out what's wrong with a person and then have them dealing with it. And there's 18 of those different things that you need to talk about, discuss, and then move on from, and so on. Here, you do something right, you reinforce it. People know, oh, okay, well, you can keep doing that. And that's fast. That's not slow, lots of talking. Major elements of Skinnerian behaviorism. 8 major assumptions about radical behaviorism. We're going to take a look at all 8 of them here. First is operant conditioning. That's a famous behaviorist term. You change behavior by positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Dog does something nice, you say sit, stay, and it does that, and then you give it a reward. If it doesn't do it, you grab its tail tight or some negative reinforcement. Then when it finally figures out sit and stay and you're rewarding it, bang, you got the behavior that you want. Or you change the behavior. this works in humans also. Operant conditioning. Critics, it's punishment. You're grabbing the dog by the tail. You're having the person hooked up to a little electrical charge, and while you're talking, they say something, bang, a little bit of an electrical charge. Or you have them wear a rubber band around their wrist. That's not what I wanted to hear from you. Snap the rubber band, bang. Now, when you're out on your own and you have thoughts, negative thoughts, snap the rubber band. So, critics say it's about punishment. Behaviorists say, no, it's not. It's about rewards. Frequency of response to stimuli, rate of response. How rapidly do you respond to something? That's the second major element of behaviorism. Frequency of response, several times in a minute or less frequently than that. Behaviorists monitor your response time. They'll say something to you. You might sit there for 30 seconds. You're looking around, thinking about what to say, and so on. That's a long response time. A more immediate response is telling the behaviorists that you're probably being more truthful. You're probably telling about or hearing about something that has indeed happened. Item 3, the operant conditioning chamber, known as the Skinner box. At first, it was a very small chamber where you could observe animal behavior, mice and rats in particular. And it had a small lever in it, and when you push that lever, it would distribute some food to you. Let's take a bigger look at this device. Here's the food dispenser where you get a reward. Here's the response lever that you press when you hear the right thing coming out of this loudspeaker. And these are lights that come on. If you get a green light, you can push this and get a little bit of food. Here's a black light. You push that and nothing happens. And the grid down here is electrified. You do the wrong thing. You push this when the red light's on, you get a kazorch, or you hear a command of some kind, and it's something you shouldn't do. If you push the lever, you get an electrical shock. So it's a stimulus response notion here, and it's built into a box. And you soon learn you don't want to be kazorched. You want to be rewarded with food. So your behavior becomes something that is a positive reward. Now, Skinner built one of these boxes, much larger, for his daughter in order to observe her behavior. And she's not running around the house all the time. And his wife isn't wondering, where is she? And I got to keep up with her and all that. It makes the wife's child care much easier. She's in this play box. A lot of critics about this, but what's a playpen? What's a crib? Lots of families had those for decades before the Skinner box came along. So here they are. They can talk to the kid through the box. They can open the doors on the front and play with the kid while the kid's still in the box. And there can be things in the box that are positive, negative, etc. Item 4, free will falsehood. Skinner, modern behaviorists say there's no such thing as free will. People cannot act any way that they wish to. Human decisions are a falsehood. They're often determined by the community. Do we really have free will to do anything we want? No, we have lots of limits. Free will falsehood. Number 4 still. Humans are dependent on previous actions. What did you do? What did you learn to do? What were you approved for? What were you punished for? Past consequences, past advantages, they determine your behavior, not free will. Item 5 of 8, the three-term contingency. You stimulate a person, they make a response, you reinforce it. SRR, stimulus response reinforcement. And the reinforcement can be negative, it can be positive. You're reinforcing something so it doesn't happen again. That's a negative electrical shock, as an example, reinforcement. So the three-term contingency, you stimulate a person, they respond, and you reinforce it, either by trying to make it not happen again or to make it happen more frequently. Item 6 is reinforcement itself. This controls behavior. This is what shapes individuals. Can be positive, in which case you will continue doing it. It can be negative. Excuse me, the reinforcement can. And that makes you stop doing it. Extinction is number 7. That's stopping a behavior, but you're not stopping it by negativity. You're stopping it by not responding to it. You do nothing, and that weakens the behavior. So you don't actually have to punish the person, like with an electrical shock or a voice command about not doing that again, so on. Instead, you do nothing. You pay no attention. It's slower and it's partial, but it disappears on a dramatic level, but not totally, hopefully. Item 8, token economics. Behaviors use tokens like money. So where they might negatively reinforce you with an electrical shock, they can positively reinforce you by giving you money. So the systems used in mental institutions, and they don't give money. They give tokens that are good only in the institution itself. Or they give you a token if you're seeing a counselor and then going out into daily life again. They'll give you a token that's only good in the counselor's office. Patient does something nice, you give them a token. Tokens can be redeemed. Cup of coffee, piece of candy, other crud. Here's the 8 things in Skinnerian behaviorism, the 8 major elements: operant conditioning, rate of response, the Skinner box, free will falsehood, three-term contingency, reinforcement, extinction, token economics. Skinner inventions. There are 6 items he invented that would be an aid in counseling and in the practice of behaviorism generally. We've already talked about the operant conditioning chamber, the Skinner box, small house. Not only did they use rats, they also used pigeons. And as I said earlier, if the light comes on and you push the lever, you get some food. The light doesn't come, if the light isn't on and you push the lever, you get no food. So it's a small house. Now, this worked very well with rats and pigeons. Contain this disc or this lever that you'd push, and that would reward you or not reward you. Here's the operant conditioning chamber. Desired behavior is followed by a reward. And down here, you can see a little food pellet pops out. If the light comes on or a speaker says something to you, a command, you only get rewarded with certain commands, but not others. Operant conditioning chamber. Random delivery of food was tried. No matter what you do, we're going to give you a piece of food. Then there'll be times when we don't give you a piece of food. It's going to be random. It's not going to have anything to do with whether what you did is good or bad. In these cases, there was no attachment made by the subject between their behavior and the reward they were granted. Subjects still made some connections, performed tasks repeatedly until the reward was delivered. So they'd go, well, I push this lever. Sometimes I get something to eat. Sometimes I don't. So I'm going to just keep pushing it. Just push and push and push and push. Finally, something comes out. So they perform tasks repeatedly until the reward is delivered. Now, this is why gambling is considered such a behavior. When you gamble, you repeatedly do something, and sometimes you get a reward and sometimes you don't. It's random. You go 8 times on the turn of a card to no effect. You go 2 times and you get more money. So it's what Skinner calls random reinforcement. And that's what makes it addictive. I got to keep doing this. So you repeat a behavior until you're rewarded, but the reward is really random. Skinner stated randomness is also the origin of rituals. So same thing like throwing a dice or getting random rewards where you're gambling. In religion, there are rituals. You pray about something, 8 out of 10 times the person dies. Make this person healthy again, etc. But it worked twice. It's random reinforcement. So rituals such as prayer are generally viewed by behaviorists as random reinforcement. Hence, rituals are seen as superstitions by behaviorists. You sprinkle some salt, then it misses the plate. Black cat crosses your path. You break a mirror. These are all situations that people are involved in. They're non-religious situations. They're random, but I broke a mirror, something bad's going to happen. There's a black cat up there. Something bad's going to happen. I spilled salt. It didn't hit on the plate. Something bad is going to happen. Well, something bad does happen in the lives of all of us occasionally and of a minor nature often. Number 2, cumulative recorder. Okay, what are you going to do? Sit and watch this rat for hours on end? You got to have somebody there probably 24 hours a day watching to see what the rat does. Or 12 hours when it maybe isn't sleeping, and they have to take notes on it. It's an impossible task. Note here, these are the charging rods across the bottom of the Skinner box that are used for negative reinforcement. Here's the lever, and here's where the food comes out for the positive responses. Cumulative recorder. Instead, Skinner invented a machine and it took care of what was happening in the box. He hooked up that machine. It would print out a chart of the activity of the rat in the box. How often does it push the lever? How often does it receive electric shocks, etc.? Here's a view of such a machine. And we'll have a bit more on that later. 3, the air crib, or also known as the Skinner box. Here's a child in there with a whole set of things to do on the wall. It's an enclosed child's crib. A crib is enclosed also, but kids get to an age where they can crawl out of it. You can't crawl out of a Skinner box. Used for babies and toddlers. Child can be mobile inside. They can be comfortable, and they're less likely to cry, as was found out when they're inside these boxes. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. Be like me living in a one-room apartment, I guess. Mother benefits. Frees up lots of her time. She can sit on the sofa and listen to music and know the baby's okay in the Skinner box. This, of course, all was occurring and this research was being done when mothers were the people who stayed home with children. Now, today, that's really not the case. We have, I remember, I think it was 1970, the first woman that was allowed to continue working while pregnant. And after she had a child, even then the women stayed at home. And now you can work up to, the final week of your pregnancy. You have a child and you get a series of months or weeks. You get 20 weeks off. You get paid something, but you're at home for the first 20 weeks of the child. And sprung up all across the United States are child care centers now, where you can take your kid and for $5,000 a year, they'll take care of it while you're at work. Here is an air crib or a Skinner box, a little different a design, much larger storage area below the box itself and then stuff above. Look here, for nighttime, you've got a curtain up here that comes down over the box. Several companies produce these items for sale, so you could go out and buy one if you had a child. Sales were very poor. Not very many people were buying them. The general population saw them as very cruel devices. And of course, there was a cost that you had to pay. Some people argue the price was too high, wasn't affordable for a lot of people. So there's the shade up at the top, storage area at the bottom. This isn't toilet paper. Kid like that had diapers, but it's part of the operating system of the device. Here is an example of a teaching machine. So this is a machine like the Skinner box, except nobody's inside it. And this is what behaviorists call programmed learning. And this was one of these first boxes. A question would appear in this window. It was a lighted window. I used one of these when I was in college in the 1960s. The Midwest was loaded with behaviorists then. Freudians tended to be on the coast. The Midwest was a lot of behaviorists. My psychology professors were behaviorists, and they would have all of us use one of these machines on occasion. So you look at a question in here. If you answer it correctly, you go to the next question. If you answer incorrectly, you go through a series of questions until you get that original question correct. It leads you on and on. This is positive reinforcement. You're always going to get a correct response. They may have to teach you how to get there if you don't know it already, and they do that in a positive way. You get immediate feedback, whether it's wrong or not. So anyhow, we're going to take a look at the 7 purposes of a teaching machine. The first one is immediate feedback. Great, you answered that correctly. Or, oh, let's keep looking at that. Here's your next question. And so on until you get to a point where you know what the correct answer was on that very first question. You're asked it again, you get it right. Item 2 of 7, reinforcement for correct answers. You get correct answers, yep, great. Some voice might tell you you did something. The box might appear with a positive statement in it, for instance. Understandable material, and it fits many age groups. So you might be able to do the same thing for ages or grades 1 through 3, for instance, and grades 9 through 12. And so many age groups can answer questions and understand what the material is about. Item 4 fits many age groups. Learning speed can be adjusted, fits the learner's needs. You can adjust the time between questions showing up. Let people sit back, oh, I've got that one right. Oh, right, okay, thinking positively. Or you can make it move much faster. So the speed at which questions appear and answers are given can be controlled on these learning machines. Students generally would develop more interest in learning and in looking at these questions and sitting at the box. And it was a fun thing, a rewarding thing to be able to do. Item 6, learning by doing. That's students seem to perform better. Students feel more involved. You're doing something. You're not sitting in a chair listening to somebody else tell you something. So it's not just about listening. And item 7 about the teaching machines. Here you see a young woman sitting at one. It's self-management. I'm doing this. I'm controlling it. Wants me to move on to the next question. I can sit for a minute if I want. You're working alone. There are less distractions. There's more rewards and there's less competition. If you're 30 people sitting in a chair in a classroom and the teacher's talking, less distractions. You can, in that situation of a classroom, you can look around, you can see what's going on with other people, you can be passing notes back and forth, etc., or you can be daydreaming about something else and so forth. So when you sit at this machine and you're alone and it's telling you what a great job you're doing, or hey, let's take another look at that, telling you a positive thing about continuing, and there's less competition. I've never raised my hand in this class. That guy over there raises his hand every time there's a question. What? So it's non-competitive. Teaching machine, well, they got replaced. Computers came along, but all of this same stuff can be done on computers today, but it's never really caught on very well. I suspect there's some schools across the US, probably private schools, that are indeed using programmed learning, and you do it on computers, but they're few and far between. During the COVID pandemic, 2020, 2021, uh, uh, the use of computers skyrocketed. Teachers put together lessons and then sent them out to you. They emailed them and you'd go through. It was more like a worksheet. You'd go through and answer questions, send it back to the teacher who'd correct it. It's a test. World War II guided missiles, Project Pigeon. This was another invention of Skinner's. Remember pigeons and rats inside the Skinner box, and they could be taught when and where, when to be rewarded, when not. Well, you put a pigeon in a missile like this, and it's required to guide the missile. If you have a guided missile, it weighs a whole lot more than just a missile that you fire off. You're trying to guide it into a certain spot. That extra weight makes it almost impossible to make the things and operate the things, and it's really impossible. How about if you put a little lightweight Skinner box in there with a pigeon who you have trained, and you now have it pushing buttons that guide it to the target that you want. Skinner's brought in by the military. A small TV camera and a screen are added to the missile in the Skinner box. The pigeon is put in the Skinner box. It's lightweight, and it guides the missile by pecking to keep the missile on course. There's a series of lights, and you pick this one and it moves it 2 degrees to the right. You pick this one and it moves it 2 degrees downward, etc. Pigeon-guided missiles of World War II. Project Pigeon is what it was called. It was tested and it worked. It was fantastic, but the Navy vetoed the idea. They just thought, well, that's ridiculous. High command didn't take it seriously. It sounded like fun and games for somebody. Here's a book, Pigeon Guided Missiles by James Moore and Paul Nero. Talks about the history of that. And of course, what happens to the pigeon? Well, it dies on impact and gets blown up also. So you probably had some people that were opposed to it because it was killing off an innocent animal. Item 6, the verbal summator. That's a machine that produced garbled speech. Subject is asked, what do you think you heard? Subjective test. Therapists can learn about the patient's subconscious mind. The patient says, here's what I think I heard. They're really telling something about themselves. It's like a Rorschach ink blot test. Tell me what you see in this ink blot. That tells the therapist something about what you're concerned with. That helps them get into your psyche. You look at ink blots, describe what you see. Here's an ink blot. Here's what I saw. It's a bat face, the whole thing. It's an island with 4 lakes. It's 2 birds on a bush. Here's the bush down here. See, here's the bird's head. Here's the bird's tail. Bird's head, bird's tail. This looks like the bird's foot claw coming up. So it's 2 birds on a bush, etc. That's verbal summation about, and you're reading stuff into an image. And that gives the counselor some notions of where to go. Earlier, the first couple of class periods here, we talked about Freud, and this is basically the same thing as what Freud called his free response tests. You say a word, and then the patient says a word back. First word you say, red. Most people say blue or green or yellow. If you say blood, that's a very different response than is expected. And the therapist keeps track of that, and then you talk about it later. This is the same thing. But for for Rorschach, it was an ink blot. For Freud, it was a word with a response. For Skinner, it's the verbal summator. Somebody garbles something at you, and then you say what you think you heard. Test was invented by Skinner. It's known as auditory perception. What do you perceive that you heard? Heard is auditory, and perceive is perception. Educational philosophy, needs in Skinnerian. Corporal punishment has to stop. He led a fight in California to stop spanking in schools, stop hitting people on the butt with a paddle in schools, and it was successful. The legislation got passed. Corporal punishment was out the window in California. You finish a stage, you move to the next stage. This is what education should be about. Stages of learning, simple to complex. Advances are reinforcements. So you start with a seed, you get a couple leaves, you get a couple more leaves, and you get blooms. You advance like a plant growing in a pot. Skinner saw three needs. Reinforcement is more effective. As a matter of fact, far more effective than is punishment. Learning has to be positively reinforced. When we're talking about educational philosophy here, Skinner says the best method, positive reinforcement. Discipline in schools is punishment, leads to property destruction, an attempt to get even, leads to absences. I'm not going there today. I don't feel very good, which is you just don't want to be in a situation where you feel like you're being punished regularly. Educational philosophy. What are the needs? Polls show general population of teachers say discipline is a must. This has been asked in the general population. What do you think the major element of schools should be? Over 70% of all people say discipline. Skinner, emphasis on discipline must stop. Change can start with teacher education. The teacher controls the classroom. Let's get them to make the changes that are needed so that pupils learn in a more positive fashion. So, another question then that comes up is, what about administrators in the school? What about the general population, which tends to follow discipline as the major element? Societal change is needed too, not just educational change. Skinner, following 4 items have to stop. Punishment causes students to abandon education. Laws are passed for mandatory attendance because people quit coming. You have to go to school till the age of 16, and if you drop out before then, we send the police to your house to take you back to school. And mandatory attendance. You miss more than 37 days in a school year, you have to take that year over again because you missed too much. Item 2, show and tell. Stop it, according to Skinner. People don't learn by being told. This is like lecturing in the classroom. It's like what I'm doing right now. At least there's some visuals. Item 3, students. What's a student's current level of understanding? That's what you need to find out. Are they at a 3/4 full glass, a half full glass? Are they at a 1/8 full glass? Without knowing this, learning's difficult. How do you teach somebody? Then you got a group of 30 students. Some of them have no idea what's going on. Others have a father who works in that capacity and has told the kid a lot about it. It might be a mathematician at some company and you're in a math class. And item 4, positivity. That's what we need in education. It needs to be started. Stop the negativity. And education just lacks positivity. You got to say positive things to people. Best practices in educational philosophy. Skinner's 5 best practices. Tell students what they're going to learn. Then, how they will learn it. So you start off, you say, this week we're going to be talking about thus and such. Here's what you will learn, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you repeat those each day or twice a day in class. Here's what we're hoping that you will learn from this. You tell them what's happening, what's going to happen, and then they're more aware of listening for those things. Lessons need to be in small tasks, not something big. You can make it more complex later, but start simple and then advance. Item 3, students move through learning with good compliments along the way. Way to go. Good job. Well done. You're the man, or you're the woman. You're the girl. You're the boy. Thumbs up. Hey, you rock. See, that's moving. That's advancing through the compliment cycle. Key to learning is success. You have to see accomplishments. You have to feel successful. You need to reach goals. So, good luck. Item 5, maintain success. Well, that's done by reinforcement. Hey, you got that correct. And then move on to the next item. Criticism of the behaviorists. Superstition and ritual. Random reinforcement leads to superstition and ritual. We talked about that earlier. The role of prayer and religion, and are the prayers answered or not? And gambling, you get random reinforcement, and that causes you to keep doing something because sometimes it comes out the way you want. Many were concerned about this critique of belief systems. They didn't like it. So there was lots of criticism from religious communities and from communities that were dealing with addictions. Several people repeated Skinner's random reinforcement experiments, and they claimed there's no such leap to rituals. We don't know what you're talking about. They're seeing something quite different from what Skinner saw. Pigeon to human connection criticism. This is Noam Chomsky taught at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's a linguist, studies languages, and a social critic. He was on Nixon's enemy list. And he's written about Skinner. Applying pigeon behavior to humans? Wait a second. That's outrageous. Can't do it. Criticism, speech. By the way, I don't know if this makes any difference. It doesn't. But Noam Chomsky is mentioned in the Epstein files. Skinner theory. Speech is a conditioned response. Child listens to people speaking to it. Hi, how you doing? What a nice smile. Oh, and the kids begins to repeat these things. That's Skinner's theory. It's a conditioned response. Traditionally, people, Chomsky included, wrote about this and said, no, it's the Broca's area in the brain. It's near the front there. And when people talk to themselves, that area lights up. There's an area in the brain that's responsible for speech and language development. Other psychologists and their criticism of Skinner. Skinner himself heavily criticized Freud. He supported defense mechanism theories of Freud, how we defend ourselves, but he really spoke out against lots of other things that Freud discussed and talked about, lots of his theories. Determinism, criticism. Central to Skinner, rewards, punishments. This is determinism. It's not free will. Humans are more viable and more diverse than how they behave alone. It's just that's not the only thing. And that's the end of this lecture. I have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to do some body language lecturing for you, and we'll come back to the questions and answers in a little bit. But let me open this thing up, and we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this body language stuff for a few minutes here. Whoops. Let me quit. This is better. Let me see. I'm getting there. Good. Now I'm at the starting page. When somebody's talking to you and they're looking at you and their arms are down by the side, that's open. They're showing openness to you. Even if they're smiling, but looking away and their arms are crossed, that's closed body language. I do not like what you are saying. So what is body language? It's nonverbal communication. So there's no expression, no oral pronouncements, nothing coming out of the mouth. Generally, we're unaware that we're doing body language. We're unaware that others are doing it, but we react to it anyway. So it's kind of an unconscious thing that we see and then react accordingly. Language is in the term body language, but there's nothing verbal about it. There's nothing oral about it. It's not a spoken language. Is it the same worldwide, or is it different? Well, that's debated. It's a lot of people see differences. A lot of people see similarities. People interacting for the first time, a decision generally gets made. I'm not talking to this person again, or we will meet again, or I don't know, well, I wonder. Generally, that's based on body language, not on what was said and communicated orally, verbally. Her hands on his shoulders, but they're not facing each other. They're looking at a third object. They are both smiling. Some body language conclusions. We'll look at these in order to just emphasize the importance of body language. Okay, what does a person respond to? What you say, that's about 7% of what gets absorbed. Your tone of voice and what you're saying, that's about 38% of what gets absorbed. Body language, the unspoken stuff, that's a majority, 55% of the feelings that you're developing in a conversation are from body language. Some people disagree with the percentages, but virtually all the researchers that have worked on this say body language is indeed a majority. It's the dominant feature in speaking and talking with other people. Here's an outline of the lecture. I'm only going to do parts of it. Here's body postures, facial expressions, touching, voice intonation, spatial relationships, how close we stand to each other, how the chest sunken, pointing out emotions that are being shown, what you do with your fingers and hands, and where your head is located and tilted, and so on, your shoulders slooping or up, or are you in a sitting position? Are your legs folded? Are they folded away from the person you're talking to or folded toward them? That makes a difference. Standing. Do we face the person? Do we stand at an angle, etc.? So let's look at spatial relations. The position of your body. All of this kind of stuff can it makes a difference. How close do you stand? When is it invasion? This is definitely a part of body language that is culturally defined. Here in the United States, we stand within 30 to 36 inches of each other when we're talking. In Asia, 18 to 20 inches. Men in Western culture, what's a safe distance? Speaking to a loved one, 0 to 18 inches. A family or close friend, 1.5 to 4 feet. An acquaintance, 4 to 12 feet. Public speaking, 12 to 25 feet. I'm miles away from all of you, but we're not looking at each other. Here are acquaintances. They're at a 4 to 12 foot span. I saw a Western civilization professor in the hallway talking with an Asian student, and that professor, trying to establish a 30-inch distance, was moved down the hallway by the Asian student trying to establish an 18-inch difference. And as I watched them, they moved down that hallway about 15 feet. Men holding hands. Necessity in the Middle East. In the West, nope. But this picture of Bush with an Arab leader, he's holding his hand. Arab and European countries, men greet by kissing. And this is true in Lebanon, the Middle East, it's true in Europe, or France. Maintain a wider social stance in Northern Europe and in the United States. Here's men greeting each other. You shake hands, stand apart. Types of body language, chest, sign of assurance, confidence, chest is out. Sign of assurance and confidence. Sometimes it can be aggression with the chest out and a fist. Chest contraction, I'm on a downer. I don't have any confidence about this situation. Here's agreement, serenity. Put your hands on your heart. Aggravation, stress can be shown with the hands on the heart and the eyes closed and the head down. Difficulties, relaxation, deep breathing shows confidence. I wanted to be sure to be able to show. Oh yeah, there we go. Body language, hands, women. Women do not show the palms of their hands in Western society to men unless they like you. How do they show the palm? If they have long hair, they'll move their finger up and around. They'll do this. Move their finger around their ear, pushing the hair back. They come forward and their palm is exposed. Or they'll play with their hair, such as you see here. This is called palming by uh, uh, body language people. This is palming, playing with the hair, showing the palm, smiling, looking at the subject. So playing with the hair, flashing a smile, biting the lip. Women often bite the lips when they're talking to you if they like you, as well as showing you the palm of the hand. They're comfortable with touching. Mirrors your actions. Nozzles flare. You can. Nozzles flare outward if somebody likes you while they're talking to you. Multiple leg crosses show that you're being liked. Interest in what you're saying. Any kind of preening behavior, such as that, playing with the hair. Men show affection by putting their hands in their pockets. So they put their hands in their pockets if they like you. This is called hooking. And sometimes it's done at the waist level, at the belt line, not the pocket line. Thumb in the pocket or inside the tops of the pants. Men show affection. They touch you. They give you little gifts. Want to meet my family? They do housework for you. They talk they talk about I do housework for you. Talk about a future, and it includes you. Gee, what if we did this and such? And they engage in activities. They're protective, attentive, tell you about your looks, gonna resolve conflicts immediately. They show vulnerability, apologize, proud of their accomplishments. Hands generally, and then we'll go to questions. So the hands open, this shows confidence and relaxation. Hands closed, I'm having some stress with what you're saying. Okay. Seated, hands can be clenched, tightening your one hand around the other hand, wringing the hands, it's called. That can show stress. Handshaking, it's a greeting ritual. Congratulations, we have an agreement. Notice people standing apart, unlike in an Arab culture. Some exceptions, you can shake hands with both genders. I had a neighbor, he and I were talking, And another neighbor who was Arab ancestry came out with his wife, with her head covered and so on. And the guy I was talking to hadn't met this new neighbor yet. He shook his hands, put his hand toward the wife. The male neighbor said, "I'm sorry, she can't shake your hand." Here is an example of that. Nope, we don't touch men, etc. Not done. Here with men, it's done and you can hold hands. Well, I'll quit. And how we doing there?
Okay, we got about 13 minutes to go, and we have some questions. In terms of Skinner's work, they're assuming was his work with children done before the creation of institutional review boards?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know the history of that, but yeah, that's you know, there's a lot of stuff in psychology that nobody wants you talking about. They don't want you talking about it with children. They they end up making rules about it. So yes, that's you can't every school's got a rule that you can't touch a student.
Oh.
So it you know any any institution, not just a school. You can walk into a place and you need help with something in a grocery store. They have rules about how you talk to and handle clients.
How
Uh,
has Skinner's radical behaviorism informed cognitive behavior therapy as used today?
hmm, I don't know. Very little. I used to watch a behaviorist professor, the church I went to when I lived on the university campus or just off campus. There were professors in that church. One of them was a behaviorist psychology professor, and his kid would start running around in the church, and he'd grab him and give him a slap on the butt. Now, Skinner says don't do that, but it is indeed negative reinforcement on running around in a place where you should be quiet and so on. So uh, I don't know. I've seen that sort of thing, I guess, but
Uh,
yeah, it's
Go ahead.
none of these things that we've talked about here are Freudian or behaviorism or Carl Jung, and that's all old. This is all old school stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, some of it's still applied. I think
yeah,
we use things, we pull out things that work like in terms of, okay, just say teens in the library. One of the things we do, we can do a lot of negative reinforcement, but we would rather try and do positive because we want them to be there in a positive manner. So we'll often be like, after we've talked to them one time about the behavior that we're addressing, then it's like if they're following it, we'll make sure when we walk by, it's like, hey, appreciate you guys following the rules, trying to do the positive um, reinforcement by noticing and acknowledging that they're doing well. So,
almost every police officer in the United States learns about body language.
mhm.
And it's stuff we didn't talk about, but if you ask a question of somebody in a police station or anywhere, and if they look up and to the left and their eyes go up that way, they're thinking about what lie can I tell? If they go up and to the right, they're thinking about yeah, how did that happen? Yeah, okay, I got it. And then they're ready to answer. And, other things that people you're questioning might do. Uh,
Mhm.
they do this all the time. They don't like being there. You do this, the odds of you telling the truth or being comfortable with being in there shows you're probably not guilty of what we're looking into here, you know. So, yeah, there are parts of this stuff that there are professions where this is very important.
Mhm. Did Skinner have a practice seeing patients?
Yes, yeah, he did. He had private practices early in his career. After that, he taught.
Okay. And did more research, I assume, then.
Yeah, wrote 180 articles and what was it, 21 books, I think. Yeah. So lots of writing. He was reaching out to other people who were doing the work.
Okay. So this person, my understanding is that behaviorism focuses on external behavior, not internal thoughts. If I hear voices in my head, the behaviorist might get me to stop talking to people about the voices, but it won't stop me from hearing them. So am I cured?
Ouch. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Um, if you're talking to a behavioral philosophy counselor, they're going to want to know about that stuff. What sorts of thoughts do you have? Write them down after you have them. Bring them to the next session. I think they would be saying something like that, and we'll talk about them. Uh,
So, and then it becomes more of like somebody having schizophrenia versus or paranoia versus
yeah,
something that is going to be able to be addressed by that. I don't know.
yeah,
Did
and you can talk about that's something you can show to other people. That's
right.
something you can keep private. But you know, and how do you get rid of negative thoughts that you're having all the time? You're doing some project and you're thinking to yourself, my brother-in-law was here, he'd be telling me everything I'm doing wrong, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Did Skinner turn against punishment because he learned negative reinforcement didn't work with rats and pigeons? Or
well,
wasn't he?
I don't know why he came out opposed to it, but most likely everybody thought it was negative. They were attaching very negative concepts to his concept of negative reinforcement, that it was punishment. And he's saying, no, it's not. We move people slowly onward then until it's positive for them. And so they see positive things. And he didn't want negative reinforcement to be seen as negativity.
Okay. So
Need,
he was somewhat for negative reinforcement to begin with, but not against punishment per se.
yeah. Uh, I don't know. It's easy for me too, looking at this stuff, to think about how negative it can be. I can certainly see how it would be taken negatively, but I
Hmm.
can see that what is wanted is a positive outcome for it all. And negative reinforcement can lead to more positive stuff. So it isn't negativity, but I don't know. I look at those kids inside that box, Skinner box, and my first reaction was, whoa, wait a second. What about freedom and movement and that kind of stuff? And then I think, I mean, I watched four younger siblings all being kept in a crib. So, um, I don't know. It's his intent is to help people.
Oh,
That's what he wanted.
okay. Still have time for questions if people want to get questions in there. Um, I was thinking about free will, how he was anti-free will, it seems like. And it's like, but isn't a free will seems not being for free will seems to be that every decision we make is predetermined by the circumstances that we've come from, is what it sounds like he's saying.
Yeah, the that's both a philosophical and a psychological situation. Um, are we a blank plate, the tabula rasa, as the ancient Greek wrote about and talked about, and we're a blank plate to be written upon as a child, and there's a tremendous amount of people nowadays. It's the nature versus nurture argument. There's a lot more nature people now than there were nurture people when I was in college. Nurture, you learn this stuff. That's
Hmm.
how it comes to you. There's a lot of people that now say we're born with a lot of this stuff. Um,
I mean,
so
I see where um we definitely learn from our environment because definitely thought patterns, um, values, things like that are taught within our environment. But then, um, I guess I see free will as that part of being able to be exposed to this and decide that you're not going to follow that, which would be considered rebellious behavior or something. But there has to be a point where somebody decides, I'm not going to follow that path. Is that free will, or would he say that something else influenced that and determined how they made that decision?
yeah,
It's
um,
it's an interesting supposition on that one. So,
yeah.
but okay, well, we're down to our final 2 minutes. Nobody
See you
else.
in a month, everybody, please.
So, yeah, registration I think is closed for Ollie unless you're joining as a new member. You can still register on the library website. I will send an email out to previous um, library attendees for the presidential series, but you can visit the website and look that up too. And as we said, Zoom will have sessions up soon, and we will be back on April. Get me the exact date here. We'll be back on April 1st. So, April Fool's Day is our very first Ulysses S. Grant one. So,
I'll be making a fool of Grant.
there you go. So, everyone, enjoy the day. The fog has burnt off, and it looks like it's going to be a lovely rest of the day. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you in a month.